everyone. My name is Joshua Carter, and right here we are at the NIFST 2022. And the theme for this year's discourse is centered on food preservation and processing in national development right here at Ikeja. So come with us.
Okay, the Nigerian Institute of Food Science and Technology, is the rallying point of food scientists, food technologists, practicing in Nigeria. And, with our charter, we now regulate the practice and also the profession. Regulate the profession and the practice of food science and technology in Nigeria.
First, let's start with regulation.
Yeah, okay, fine. So, for regulation, what we do is that all the graduates of food science and tech, from the polytechnics and the universities in Nigeria, when they graduate, they have to register with the institute, and then they become members, right? Okay. While they are in the school, they can also be student members. We are just student members. But when they graduate, they have to become members and they have to register with us. So what we are trying to achieve is that we want to have professionals, who are well trained and who can work successfully in the food industries. And then we are trying to also mandate the food industries to employ qualified food scientists and food technologists to work with them.
What are they going to be doing?
Well, in the food industry, we have our graduates, our professionals. They work in the quality control department. They work in the quality assurance department. They work in the production department. They work in the regulatory affairs department inside the company as well, because they have to register also with NAFDAC. So what NAFDAC does, NAFDAC regulates finished foods. They also regulate maybe food ingredients, that's the inputs to put into food, and apart from pharmaceuticals. But what we regulate the practice. That is, we regulate the quality of professionals that will work in the food industry and make sure that quality professionals are working in the food industries. And by so doing, we will ensure that the industries are producing safe food, wholesome food, that's nutritious as well, that will benefit, the whole populace.
So how about the other
Yeah. That is the regulation. The practice now, I've touched some of that. Right from the time that we have students in the food science and tech departments of universities and polytechnics, they are supposed to register with us as student members, right? And when they graduate, like I said, they will also register with us as members, And apart from that, there are some graduates who studied other courses like biochemistry, chemistry, microbiology, chemical engineering, and agricultural allied courses. They are not food scientists and food technologists. Now, those people, they are also employed in the food industry. So what we want to do is that before they can work in the food industry, we as an institute, now that we are chartered, we are going to organize some kind of conversion courses, for them, or ask them to go for postgraduate diploma in food science and technology before they can work in the food industry. So that's part of what we are, doing now to regulate, the practice of the profession.
All right, so is funding an issue, especially with this practice?
Okay, now, with the institute, we thank God that we became chartered about 2 years ago. And the president, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, signed our charter, and we are now the charter is under the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, and it is called the Council, Nigerian Council of Food Science and Technology. So now with that council, it means we have federal government backing, for what we are doing, and because we have federal government backing, we have some funding from federal government to fund all these activities. Of course, we have a registrar. We are going to have a council headed by the chairman of council, and other, members of council, which will be drawn from, stakeholders in the food industry, like NAFDAC, SON, Standards Organization of Nigeria, Federal Institute of Industrial Research, Raw Materials Research and Development, and so on. So the constitution of the council will embrace all these stakeholders, and of course, like I said, there is some funding from the federal government to be able to perpetrate this.
All right. So you've spoken, in length about when it comes to regulation. You've talked about the standard practice. What can you tell us about preservation, especially from waste?
Especially from
Waste.
Okay, yeah. The theme of this conference, is about food processing and preservation, and the ways that this can contribute to national development. You see that food processing and preservation cannot be overemphasized in national development. There is a lot of food losses, After you produce food, most of them are not preserved. After you eat the one you want to eat raw, you have wastages, and this is not right because it's bringing us very far away from food security.
Especially in a country where we have so much population.
We have 200 million and we have to feed this teeming population. So how do we feed them when we continue to have wastages? So the answer is to preserve food, to process food.
So what are you doing in regards to preserving of food?
As an institute, what we do is, we encourage industries and our members to go into food preservation and food processing to establish, SMEs, small and medium-scale industries, even micro industries, where they can start, food processing. As you can see, we have some exhibitors here. Most of them, if not all of them, let's say most of them, because there are some big companies there. Most of them are SMEs, and I can say that our crusade is earning dividends. So you can see some, processing plantain chips. You have plantain flour there. You have cassava flour. You have so many things, and this, contributing to the food value chain because you are converting cassava into cassava flour. You are converting cassava into cassava starch. And when you have cassava flour, you can consume. You can consume. Because cassava, if you just leave it like that, it's going to, So, but when you convert to cassava flour, the shelf life is extended. When you convert it to starch, you can use the starch for different things. You can sell to the industries, They use, starch for so many things. You can use it for custard. You can use it in a culinary, business. You can use it in baby food and so on, So you are adding value to it, And then apart from that, we have people who have plantain flour there as well. This is part of food processing and preservation that we are talking about. When you harvest plantain and you just leave it, after some time it rots. But after you consume what you want to consume raw, then you can preserve the rest by converting it to plantain flour. By so doing, you have extended the shelf life, and then so many people can buy plantain flour and eat for a long time. So this is a very powerful contribution to food security in Nigeria. Then apart from that, when you preserve food and you process, for example, by the time you process enough for the country, you can now start off exporting some of these processed foods outside Nigeria and earn some foreign exchange, And this is very critical now because, our petrodollar is not enough for the country again. So we need to look at other ways of generating foreign exchange, and revenue. So food preservation, food processing, it's, a very good way of generating extra revenue for the country.
The Nigerian Institute of Food Science and Technology, I welcome you all to this 2022 Food Safety Day, which is recognized globally every 7th of June. And of course, this year's theme is safer food, better health. What Food Safety Day is to draw attention and inspire action to help prevent economic prosperity, agriculture, market access, flourish, and sustainable development. the World Health Organization WHO and the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO jointly facilitate the observance of World Food Safety Day in collaboration with member states and other relevant organizations. The International Day is an opportunity to strengthen efforts to ensure that food we eat is safe, mainstream food safety in the public agenda, and reduce the burden of foodborne diseases globally. However, access to sufficient amount of safe food is key to sustaining life and promoting good health. Foodborne illnesses are usually infectious or toxic in nature and often invisible to the plain eye, caused by bacteria, viruses, parasites, or chemical substances entering the body through contaminated food or water. Food safety has a critical role in ensuring that food stays safe in every stage of the food chain, from production to harvest, all the way to production and consumption.
You don't understand.
With an estimated 600 million cases of foodborne illnesses annually, unsafe food is a threat to human health and economics, disproportionately affecting vulnerable and marginalized people, especially women and children. The Lagos State Commission, in collaboration with other agencies of government, is already more than ever before to roll out regulations with key and critical stakeholders in order to ensure safer food in Lagos State. By so doing, therefore, foodborne diseases and food poisoning will be a thing of the past in the state. I want to congratulate you once again on this occasion of World Food Day 2022. So, whether you grow food, process food, transport, store, distribute, sell, prepare, serve, or consume food, you have a role to play in keeping it safe. Take part in this celebration. I want to thank you once again. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
The event has been quite successful. You know, there's been a lot to learn, you know, and a lot of takeaways. And also, there are also things that we think the children also ought to learn. For instance, the children think that tomato paste is actually made from tomato. Okay, so they need to understand that tomato paste, you know, is a lot of things coming together. So, but they think it's boiled down tomatoes, you know, and they need to be corrected, they need to be taught, they need to have an understanding of what it means to have tomato paste. So if they're thinking of alternative to tomato or afraid of tomatoes, you know, spoiling, then it is not the tomato paste they should be looking to, but rather to look at other ways of consuming tomato faster.
Now tell us a little bit about food preservation and processing.
Okay, when you're talking about food preservation, for me as a consumer, I tend to want to eat the food as fresh as possible without having to over-process or try to preserve it in such a way that you have to add chemicals to it. So I tend to buy fewer things or fewer foods that are packaged or processed or refined. I don't go for things that are refined. And I buy fresh foods as much as I can consume within a week, so that I don't run into the problem of wanting to either refrigerate for such a long time or thinking about having to process it in a way that, you know, I'll lose the nutrients.
All right, so now you've talked about buying fewer food and also refraining from preserving it by refrigerating it for a long time. How about food wastage? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, if you buy fewer foods, you lose less, because when you buy so much thinking that you want to keep it for a very long time and you don't have light, at the end of the day you're going to lose a lot of food and you end up throwing it out. Well, I don't really throw food out. I put food in my little garden, so it fertilizes the soil instead of having to put fertilizer. I don't use fertilizer, and so once you buy fewer foods or less food and consume as much as you need, okay, so that way you end up not having any food loss or food wastage. Okay, so it's absolutely important that we know how much the family consumes within a period of time and just buy for that period instead of having to buy, because these days the fruits and the vegetables that we have are planted with chemicals, fertilizers, and they're not as sturdy as natural organic ones. Okay, so at the end of the day, they're very watery and they go bad within days. So it's important that we even understand that in the first place, because not all vegetables are planted the same way. What I plant in my garden doesn't last even longer than what I buy from the market. So, and it depends on whether it is planted organically or using chemical fertilizer. So all of those, what we plant our foods with, because whatever it is that you put in is what you get out. So when we look at all of that holistically, we'll tend now to have an understanding of what's going on and tend to buy fewer foods or less food and buy as much as we can consume in a particular period, so we avoid food wastage.
Every food we consume, most of them goes through either preparation and processing. And in the course of producing food, from raw material, they have to pass through some production, processing, then we preserve them either for the immediate use or future use. In the course of doing this, processing the food, there are some basic things that needs to be maintained. We have good manufacturing practice to ensure that the products are being produced in a very good environment using the adequate machinery and equipment. And the personnel that are handling the food are also handling it in such a way that the product is not contaminated before it gets to the market or the final consumer. And in the process of preserving food, we have to use the right kind of additives to preserve food. They must be kept in the right preservation, like in the right storage temperature, right storage condition, so that it can help in food abundance and enhance national development. If you take a look at the coronavirus that happened few months and last year, you will notice that if you don't have food being preserved, we could have run into a lot of food scarcity, and there will be hunger in the land. So there is need to work more on how to preserve our food for future use.
This is the basis for our country. You know, in a lot of ways, a lot of food that we grow and harvest are wasted. So post-harvest losses make a very great part of the losses of food in our country. So to ensure food security in our country, we need to give a good time, a good attention to food and preservation. With this, we're able to extend the shelf life of our products. We're able to produce and ensure that a lot of them are able to reach their population everywhere they are. So it's a major thing that we need to promote in our country. One, it will basically reduce or eliminate post-harvest losses in our country.
The issue we have, the challenge we have in the country is that post-harvest losses is as high as 40 to 50%.
Why is that so high?
Yeah, because we are not preserving, we are not processing. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't waste food. When we say that food is not enough, it's expensive and all whatnot. And because we don't preserve enough, we don't process enough, that's why we have waste. Under the normal circumstances, once the food comes from the farm, the next thing is that it either gets to the consumption table or goes to the factory, where it can be converted into a secondary product. That's the one we call preservation. So with that, we'll have food all year round. Like now it's mango season. If you get to Ketu market and other markets in Nigeria, you see a lot of mango fruits wasted. It should not be. In other clients, it's not like that. If we have been preserving all those things, what we will now do, after the mango season, we can now be having the mango juice at a reduced price. Now, you can see the effect on the prices of food, commodities. Because if you're a seller, maybe you buy a basket of mango. you know you are going to waste 40 to 50% of that mango you bought from the market. Certainly, you have to cover up. Then how do you cover? Maybe something you can sell 100 naira, you end up selling it 200 naira so that you don't run at a loss because of the waste. So we really need to invest. Government needs to invest. It's high tech. Let's just use that word. It's high tech. It requires money. Then the expertise like us to come in.
So with this forum right now, what is it going to address at the moment?
Yes, this forum is a kind of enlightenment forum. I thank God you are the press, because most of the people here are professional members. We all know this.
Okay, so today I came here hoping that I would be able to learn a lot of things, and I actually did learn a lot of things. And it was particularly during the session where they spoke about unethical practices that make food unsafe. And so I learned about some of the things that people do, like burning pomo with tires, diluting the food with lower food values, like foods with lower values, sorry. And I also learned about how they ban Nigeria from exporting, I think the EU aspect, and I really learned a lot of things today.
Okay, I learned about food safety, and we realized that most like roadside food sellers, like what they basically give us is unhealthy and all. But when I came here and the exhibitions going round, I realized that most of the products are like they try to keep it natural as possible. So I liked that fact.
Well, preservation and processing are age-long terminologies. Okay, they are age-long because our mothers have been processing locust beans since we were small, and they were trying to make it safe. But nowadays, because of the size of the community, we are talking about more than 7 billion people in the whole world now, and Nigeria, more than 200 million people, food must be available. And a number of food are perishing now because we are still using the old style of preserving, old style of processing. And that is what we are exposing ourselves to now, that we need to think deeply and find a common ground where we can make food available for people so that everybody can consume safe and good food.
So tell something about wastage.
Yes, exactly. Before till now, more than 40% of harvests are wasted. If you go to Mile 12 market now, you'll be surprised what you'll see there. People travel all the way from Okeho, all the way from Maiduguri to bring food to Mile 12. Before they even get there, they have lost the food. And all these wastages, apart from the fact that they are economic loss, they equally become an environmental problem at the end of the day. That is what NIFST is trying to preach, that can we find a way to process our food better so that we can maximize the output that we are getting.
Okay, about wastage, I think I'll talk to my colleagues about that one, because basically we're the ones wasting the food when we buy food and then we don't. So I'll try to talk to my colleagues if they can finish the food they buy and they don't buy more than they can eat.
So what has been our challenge has been in the past is funding, finance, and sometimes when you make policies and make recommendations to the relevant authorities, they play it down. They play it down. The government, both federal level, state level, local government level.
So when you talk about financing now, what responses are you getting from those responsible?
Yes, from the finance banks, we find it sometimes very difficult because the issue of financing in Nigeria, you are coming with collateral, you have to know this, you have to
a lot of paperwork.
Exactly, a lot of paperwork. And most professionals that have the expertise in their head, they don't have the collateral, they don't have the finance probably to source for all those funds from maybe Bank of Industry or other banks that are specialized in financing this kind of thing. So that's the challenge we have.
It's been very wonderful, it's been very entertaining, it's been very educating and enlightening from today's program entitled NIFST Day 2022. It's been wonderful. We've heard so much about how to preserve food, how to process food, and more importantly, how to reduce waste, because we need food to sustain us. Yes, so I'm sure you would have learned something or two from today's edition, and also hope to go back home to also apply these things that you have learned in order to improve your standard of food preservation and also processing. From all of us here, my name is Joshua Okata. It's bye for now.